So, what happened to Game Freak, the studio behind the Pokemon games? The reaction to the Pokemon Legends ZA made me think about why are people so done with Pokemon? Beside the hardcore community, it seems that whenever a Pokemon game is announced, everyone is just so pessimistic and believes that it's going to be another messy open world slob. It seems that everyone's immediate judgment to any new Pokemon game is that it's going to be bad, and the first thing they point is the graphics of Legends ZA, when the mechanics looks so fun. So, by that logic, any video game with high photorealistic graphics is by default good. But we know that isn't true from recent old examples. A recent game that had some of the best graphics in video games was The Immortals of Avium, a game that was supposed to be the example of Unreal Engine 5 power. And sure, it did that, but most people forgot it existed after a week of its release. Hell, I would be surprised if they knew about it outside of social media. While video games that were made with Unreal Engine 3, such as Dishonored, with its beautiful stylized graphics, are still in some people's top 10 video games of all time. And, and it is still playable and fun to this very day, 13 years later. More recent games with their stylized graphics, such as Hades, are more enjoyable and can be more successful than AAA video games, simply because they prioritized art direction over high realistic graphics. Videos with super high graphics can still be fun. Just look at Red Dead Redemption 2 with some of the best graphics in video game history. It's absolutely fun, and playing it is like traveling in time. But it seems that whether a video game is better with high graphics or not depends on the studio that makes it. Red Dead Redemption's quality comes from Rockstar excellence in making high graphics, open world games. That is their chicken burgers for Popeyes. It's what they are good at. A studio that has a type of game design that is better at seems to be the theme in the industry. After all, these studios have built teams that got good at making a type of game that the studio needed to make multiple times, thus becoming really good at making the same game as they know what they need. And even if they recycle the team, they still keep some people from the game design or production side. And as with this logic, the opposite works too. There are many examples of studios that tried to deviate from their philosophy and tried to make something completely new and wild and different, only to fail miserably. I have noticed that studios tend to fall into four categories. The first being studios that excelled at making role-playing simulation games. Second being studios that mastered the art of interactive stories. Third, studios that got good at designing sandbox, mindless, fun games. And fourth, studios that are good at making mechanically fun video games. For Game Freak, the studio that makes mainline Pokemon video games, they are really good at making mechanically fun video games with beautiful art direction, which means that when they deviate from what they are good at, the final product may not be as good as what they can normally come out with. Let's take their old perfected style of limited 3D that they used to go with before shifting completely to 3D video games. Back when CGI was still considered new and all video games started shifting from having pixelated characters to 3D ones on the PlayStation and Xbox, Pokemon, being a Nintendo platform exclusive, had to work around the limited capabilities of the DS, thus implementing CGI whenever they can in simple forms, a limited 3D style. This started with Diamond and Pearl games from 2006 to Black and White 2. In 2012, in these 6 years, Game Freak honed their games on this style to near perfection in Pokemon Black and White 2, thus releasing 4 video games that some fans consider to be the best in the franchise. But as time moved on and Nintendo released the 3DS, a platform fully capable of playing 3DS games, although in low graphics, even for its time, meaning that Game Freak was finally able to do what fans always wanted at that time, a fully 3D Pokemon game. But this happened at a terrible time in the franchise. You see, even though nowadays the Black and White series is considered the best in the franchise, fans at the time were very disappointed with the decision of not adding the national dex in the game. This, with the outdated graphics of the game, meant that the turnout of new fans was low. And by pissing off older fans, the second version of Pokemon Black and White was a disaster. But this is the most lucrative media franchise in the world. No publisher would allow it to just die. So they did in 2013 when the release of the long-awaited fully 3D Pokemon video game happened. Pokemon X and Y, and oh my god, did they do a good job with the graphics. It's an extremely beautiful game for the 3DS, and it paid off, even though it's one of the easiest Pokemon games to a point that it's hard to enjoy until the third act. It became the fastest selling Pokemon game at the time, selling 3 times the usual sales of a Pokemon game. And to deal with the criticism of X and Y after its release, they released the Gen 3 remakes a year after. The Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire games that are now considered some of the best video game remakes ever made. They are super fun to play with optimized difficulty, and they have a pretty fun story and beautiful cutscenes. Games that are still enjoyable and more fun than a lot of games released today. I mean, it's not easy to make the experience of traveling an area that looks like this to be a breathtaking experience. Only a handful of games manage to make traveling a low graphic continent as good as this today. And even they have better graphics. And it got even better with Pokemon Sun and Moon, a game that reminds me of some of my most favorite JRPGs ever, when it has less graphic fidelity. And it is even shaping up to be one of my most favorite video games ever, and maybe even my most favorite Pokemon game. By taking everything they did right and building on top of it. That's how they achieved this level of quality. They messed up in Pokemon X and Y, and then they fixed their issues in the Gen 3 remakes, and built on top of that by the time Ultra Sun and Moon arrived. In the end, a studio that excels in linear design shouldn't have made an open world game, but I hope that Legends ZA have learned from their mistakes, and build on the good stuff they made in Legends Arceus instead. After all, the map of Lumia City looks really nice and packed with content, and the fact that they are mixing what seems to be an open air areas like the wild areas with areas where you play the story in a linear way is the best way to handle this. For a studio that is still learning how to design an open world game, or maybe this is the sweet spot for Game Freak, a half open world and a half linear video game. That is, if that's what Legends ZA is like. One last point I would really like to mention, that at night, on these windows in Legends ZA and the other places where you expect light to come from in the city that is supposed to be called the City of Light, it's a nice detail that matters in terms of creating beautiful atmosphere fit for the biggest city in the land of beauty. That's all I have today. Thank you so much. Goodbye.